Well, greetings, everyone. Welcome to the maiden voyage of the Greater Lafayette Sports Report video slash podcast as we try to get this thing up and running as football season is underway and then basketball season's coming and hopefully provide some insight, humor, and whatever else that comes to mind as Purdue football uh, gets going here 2-0. That's double the win total. All the jokes that you've made the last week are work. But now, as you know, the USC is coming to town on Saturday, and they're going to have to raise their level of play and hope USC comes down a little bit and see if we get a competitive game on Saturday. And based off last year, that's what you're looking for. You're just looking for this team to compete, um, not give up, play hard, do all those things. And, you know, we've seen so far that they're pretty well prepared. Coaching staff kind of knows what it's doing. Um, Quick to make adjustments, quick to make changes, quick to stay with what works. And I think that's a positive for where this program is headed. And that's why Saturday is going to be interesting because, Purdue's not going to have um, probably the talent level that USC has. So they're going to have to do some things to stay in the game and compete. But what have we learned the first two games for Purdue? Some of the things I just mentioned. They are better prepared. Um, they play hard. Uh, they have some strengths that we've seen against that competition, where they were able to run the ball effectively, especially against Southern Illinois in the second half. They faced some adversity in the Southern Illinois game where they got scored on the first drive. Purdue came back and then Southern Illinois scored again. But after that point, Purdue's defense um, slowed down Southern Illinois, and the offense leaned on the offensive line and Devin Mockenby and put that game away in the second half. And so those are the things that are different this year compared to last year, even though what happens this year has nothing to do with last year, and what happened last year has nothing to do with this year because the team is so different. The schemes are so different. Everything is different that it's really hard to use last year as a reference point. The reference point for last year is that they were 1-11, and it's hard not to bring it up because they were 1-11, and they have now 2 wins in 2 weeks, which is a big improvement from last year. But the teams are just so different that it's just so hard to compare uh, this year to last year. Again, the only thing is the record, and I think Purdue fans are seeing a different kind of product on the field. Uh, and but what's that? What does that mean once you get in the Big Ten season? What's that mean when you play Notre Dame? What does that mean in October? And then what does it mean in November when you're playing Michigan and Ohio State and Washington and Indiana to close out the year? So um, still a lot of unanswered questions. I don't think Saturday is going to answer them all. It's a little bit of a indication of where the program's at. I mean, USC hasn't been a juggernaut um, recently. They're not picked. I would not put them in the category of favorite to win the Big Ten this year. They're I think they're a notch below Ohio State and Penn State and probably Oregon at this point, but they're probably in that next tier. And depending on you know how they play and how they perform and who they beat and all that kind of stuff is will determine kind of where they're at the end of the year. There's always high expectations at USC, and this year's no different. And they have the offense. They've proven in the first 2 weeks they have a dynamic offense. But again, They played Missouri State, which I think was in its first game as an FBS program, and then they beat Georgia Southern last week, put up gaudy numbers, and they've been impressive offensively. Their quarterback, Jaden Mahava, is a guy that played for Barry Odom at UNLV before transferring to USC. Now, Odom didn't recruit him; he inherited him, but he knows him. Mahava knows Odom, so there's some, you have a little bit of familiarity there. And then Josh Henson, one of Purdue's coaches, spent time on the USC staff, so there's some baked in connections there. What does that mean come Saturday? Who knows? I mean, Purdue's a completely different. I mean, and I think Lincoln Riley said it, the USC coach earlier in the week. You can't go back to last year and look at Purdue's team because you got 54 transfers, you got 82 newcomers. It does you really no good to look at the film from last year if you're USC. Now, Purdue can look at USC's film and probably have been all summer as far as personnel goes and things like that. They added newcomers. Everybody adds newcomers nowadays. But what Purdue has done these first 2 weeks is basically what USC is going to go on. And again, the competition is not the same. Uh, and USC is, you would think that USC is taking a little bit of step up in class to play Purdue, based on some of the personnel Purdue has on its team. Um, so uh, I don't think this will turn into what it turned into last year when Purdue played really good teams in the Big Ten. I expect them to compete, hold their own in some spots, but then in other spots they're probably going to be outmanned. And then you get into depth. Um, Purdue hasn't suffered that one or two major injuries that kind of affects them. So they should be going into this week pretty healthy, even though they've had a couple of receivers not play the first 2 weeks of the season. And Odom is pretty tight-lipped on injuries, so we're not sure exactly who will suit up, and if they have some more players that didn't play the first two games, that they'll be available on Saturday in this game. But Purdue has a little bit of momentum. They feel good about what they've done. I don't think they're delusional that they've arrived. But again, I think fans in general just want to see a team that competes. They want to see a game that gets into the second half, um, and then go from there. Give yourself a chance is what you have to do, and then you just go out and play and see if you can surprise somebody. But Purdue's going to have to execute at a high level. They're going to have to play turnover free. They've just had 1 and 2 games, and they're going to have to force some turnovers. They've done a good job with penalties in the first 2 games, but I think this is a game where you might see some more penalties, not because Purdue will be undisciplined. They're going to go up against bigger, stronger, faster players than they have in the first 2 weeks. Ball State and Southern Illinois, not at the same talent level as USC. So when you play against a higher caliber of athlete, things move a little bit quicker. Um, you might have to grab, you might have to commit some penalties along the line, um, just because of you're trying to keep up from an athletic standpoint. But that doesn't, personal fouls are undisciplined penalties. We haven't seen those from Purdue. Uh, False starts, um, I consider undisciplined and had nothing to do with athleticism. But when you get into some other things where, your offensive line may be called for holding a few times, just trying to wrestle with a bigger and stronger defensive lineman, or maybe a pass interference penalty, just trying to keep up with a receiver. Um, and that part I think is interesting to watch. How does Purdue match up athletically with USC, and do they get themselves in a position where they do have some more penalties in some of those scenarios, or do they hold up well? Um, So, I think in that case, I think Purdue's in a much better place from a penalty standpoint this year under Odom and his staff compared to where they were last year with Ryan Walters and that staff. Um, but yeah, that's something I think you keep an eye out on just to kind of see where Purdue is at from that standpoint. But they're going to have to be on their A game to knock it off. And the running game's been good. They're going to have to uh, work the clock um, and chew up some yardage. The offensive line has played well enough, but again, they're stepping up in class. And Ryan Brown, um, he's had the one turnover he underthrew down the middle last week against Southern Illinois, but for the most part, he's been solid. But again, you know, you saw Ryan Brown last year against Oregon, and it did not go well. That was coming off the Illinois game where he played really well, almost led him to victory. But again, this is going to be a different kind of athlete that everybody's facing, and is he can he step up and um, deliver some passes and uh, keep this offense on the field? And the one thing throughout the history of Purdue football, not just this is not a Barry Odom issue, or it wasn't a Ryan Walters issue, or a Jeff Brom issue, or a Daryl Hazel issue, or a Danny Hope issue, or Joe Tiller issue. Um, Purdue's receivers historically have struggled against man coverage. Just getting that kind of separation uh, against really good defensive backs, cornerbacks, and safeties, and just having that separation. And you got to have a quarterback that can deliver that ball in the right spot at the right time. Um, and that's something real, I think, really to watch in this game is can Ryan Brown deliver those plays on the perimeter or across the middle? And can the receivers get the right amount of separation to make plays? And historically, Purdue has struggled when they played Ohio State and Michigan and those type of teams that will will get up on you, get in your grill, press you up. Over the years, the formula to really slow down Purdue's passing game has been to, play man to man, play tight man to man, and force the quarterback to make perfect throws, but also force the receiver to create some separation. And Purdue's had, Rondell Moore, they've had other players that have stepped up and been able to do that. Um, so Purdue's receivers are really gonna have to show what they can do from an athletic standpoint uh, against USC and their athletes. And this is a USC defense that I believe leads the nation in sacks and tackles for loss. So they've done a good job in the first two games of pushing Missouri State and Georgia Southern backward. And another thing Purdue can't do is have they get off their down and distance situation. They can't be second and 13. You can't be third and 17. I mean, you've got to stay on pace. You got to be second and six, second and five, third and three, third and two. You got to stay on schedule as much as you can because you just cannot afford to be in those down and distance situations where they're going to tee off on you and they're going to blitz you and they're going to come up the middle, off the corners, um, and force you into something you don't want to do. Um, but if you're second and five, third and three, third and two, they can't completely sell out against you. And I think that's going to be a key. Can Purdue generate enough on first down? We talk about third down all the time, how important that down is. But first and second down probably become more important to see where you're at on third down. Purdue's getting some good yardage on first down and second down. They're going to be in a favorable position on third down to do some things. They were really good on third down against Southern Illinois. Um, they didn't even punt last week. So those are a few things to watch out for on Saturday as Purdue really steps up in class. Late afternoon game. A lot of eyeballs will be on this game because it's USC. Now, the one thing in Purdue's favor, and it's a trend, and it really has nothing to do with this year's USC team, but the Trojans have lost their last 14 games in the Central and Eastern time zone. I believe they were 0-3 last year, coming east to play Big Ten teams. They lost to Michigan. I know off the top of my head. But they're 0-14, and I think their last win in the Central and Eastern time zone was at Notre Dame, maybe in 2011 or 2012. So it's just one of those things that you kind of you look out for. It won't be a body clock type of situation for them because the game is 3:30 here in Indiana, and that would be 12:30 out on the West Coast. So that's a normal start time for them. And whereas another game this week, Oregon and Northwestern kicks off at noon Eastern, which is 9 o'clock out west. That is not normal for West Coast teams. And I don't know why. I mean, I know why, but there has to be some common sense in this situation from the TV networks as far as putting teams, you know, from the West Coast in a disadvantaged situation, uh, forcing them to play at 9 a.m. their time. And that's no different than what's going to happen next week when Michigan State goes to USC, and that game is going to start at 11 o'clock Eastern time. That's not normal. But this is what happens when you take the money from TV and um, you give them complete control over start times, and you don't step in. I mean, I think you try to talk some common sense to them, but at the end of the day, it's like, well, we're writing the checks, so we'll tell you when you play your games, and you put your hands up in the air and you say, okay, we like the money that's coming in. All the schools like the money. Um, that's part of it when you sign that deal in blood with the TV networks, and you need that money. Each school needs that money. Um, I think Big Ten schools, most of them, not all, they all haven't reached the full share category yet. But the core group of Big Ten schools, which includes Purdue, um, probably getting anywhere from 75 to $80 million this year from media rights. So, I mean, this has happened forever. This has happened for a long time. You know, the conferences, not just the Big Ten, the SEC, the ACC, the Big 12, and even when the Pac-12 existed, um, they sell their soul to TV, and you relinquish control over things like start times and days of the week that you play, and might be inconvenience for fans, but um, they really, I mean, that's just the way it is. Fans can complain and have an uproar about it, but TV is going to make the final decision. They're writing the checks, and that's it. So USC is going to have a bit of extreme over the next couple weeks, where they're playing 12:30 their time this Saturday. Then they're going to turn around and play at 8 o'clock West Coast time, and then Michigan State's going to kick off that game, in 10 days or so at USC at 11 o'clock Eastern time. That game's not going to get over till between 2 and 2:30 Eastern time. I'd be curious if they're flying back that night, or do they come back? Do they wait and come back a little bit later? I'm sure there's some sleep studies involved as far as what is best. Because if the game's over, let's say the game's over at 2:30 in the morning Eastern time out there. Well, you've got a good hour and a half before you get out of there. So you're looking at 3:30, 4 o'clock in the morning Eastern time. Then you've got to go to the airport. You got to load everything up. You may not be leaving till 5 or 5:30 in the morning Eastern time, and then you got a 4-hour flight back. I mean, you're not probably back in Lansing until noon, back on campus till noon on that Sunday morning, Sunday afternoon, and the recovery time for that um, will be interesting to see how Michigan State's next game goes after that. Because I don't know if you remember back in let's see, 2009, Purdue went to Oregon. It was a 10 o'clock game, Eastern time, 7 o'clock game out west. Anyway, Purdue played. Um, they lost, had a chance to get a 2-point conversion late in the game, but it didn't go well. So, I mean, the game goes into well into the early morning hours, East Coast time. Purdue flies back that night after the game. They get in. They're trying to recover, and that next week they played Northern Illinois at Ross-Ade Stadium. And Northern Illinois came in and just kind of ran the ball down Purdue's throat. Purdue was, if I remember correctly, Purdue was just they lacked some energy in that game, if I remember right. But anyway, Northern Illinois got on them early, ran the ball down their throat. Um, and then I remember talking to a couple players later in the year, and that game came up, and a couple of them said, yeah, it was very difficult to recover from that West Coast trip, then to turn around and play again 6 days later against whoever was on the schedule. So the recovery time is probably more important than the preparation time in these late games so far. And I don't think we know what time because Purdue plays at Washington later in November. I don't think we know what time that game will be. I mean, that could be a 10 o'clock Eastern time game. But in Purdue's favor for that November, they have a off week after that. Then it's the bucket game on that Friday. So they would have extra time to prepare. But my point is that that's not taken into consideration when these start times are determined. Um, it's just about what time's the game, and then that's it. TV doesn't care about that. But I do think there's been a lot of studies done and a lot of careful planning to help recovery with these athletes. When the Big Ten expanded to the West Coast, knowing that there would be issues on both sides. You know, flying east to west, west to east. So I know that's not really has anything to do with Saturday's game, but it got me thinking, and then I go on this tangent, and that's what you get. But anyway, just wanted to kind of start off doing this video thing and try to do it at least once a week, maybe twice, depending. When you're semi-retired, you don't have a schedule per se, um, but this is what I'm doing right now. So anyway, our site, the Greater Lafayette Sports Report, up and running. Um, we'll have information about the game. Still covering women's basketball, um, but we've branched into other subjects to kind of till we get to basketball season. And so, if you want to, it's free. You can subscribe and it'll arrive in your email, or you can follow, and then you get a little bit extra information on some of the notes that I pass along. So there's a couple ways to get it. You can subscribe. This comes in your email. It's free, not charging anybody. Not sure it's worth paying for, but appreciate any support that you give it. And hopefully throughout the football season, then once basketball season starts, we'll have obviously more content with football and men's basketball and women's basketball. Um, but that's kind of what it is right now. So if you're seeing this, we appreciate you stopping by. I guess you can hit a like button. I'm not familiar with all this stuff. Um, so I guess I should educate myself a little bit better of how all this stuff works. But over the course of time, we'll figure it out, and um, we'll see what happens to it. But anyway, that's kind of it right now. If, questions or concerns or comments, you can reach out. Um, I'm sure there's a place to type in comments on this YouTube thing, or if not, you can go to the Greater Lafayette Sports Report on Substack, and yeah, you can leave comments there if you like, and always on the Twitter machine, um, you know, somewhere you can find me. Yeah, I'm not hard to find. I don't believe I'm hard to find. I just need to put on my glasses real quick here to see what magic buttons I need to push here. But anyway, that's our first installment of this video slash podcast. Hope you enjoyed it, um, and look forward to doing it the next time. And we'll recap the USC game next week and look ahead to Purdue going to Notre Dame after that, as they get into the month of September, and then they'll have an off week, and then Illinois is going to come to town, and I think Illinois played really well last week at Duke. I think Illinois really has a good shot of getting in the college football playoff. Um, I think the schedule lines up for them, that if they take care of business, I think they'll be in good shape, at least to be in contention for that, along with Ohio State and Penn State. Oregon's going to be in that mix. USC could be in that mix as well. So that's going to do it. Um, Enjoy your day. Enjoy the rest of your week, and we'll talk to you next week, recapping USC and Purdue and looking ahead to what Notre Dame may offer. And I think the men's Big Ten basketball schedule should be out over the next few days. And I'll be curious how that plays out, and whether um, the turnaround times from coming from east to west, west to east, if they've built in an extra day. And one thing I think they need to do is, like, when teams go to LA, you don't need a day, you don't need 2 days between games. You just don't. And shorten the trip by a day. I know the old Pac-12 schools want to do that when they come east. Like if they go Rutgers, Maryland, they don't want 2 days between. They just want one. They want one day. We'll see if that's going to be accommodated across the league, or if it's case by case situation. Ideally, you want everybody to be on the same schedule as far as 2 days off between games. That's something the coaches have wanted. That's the parameters that they've wanted. Um, you'd like that all to be equal, but there's the convenience of it. I mean, when teams go west or they come east, they're gone for 5 days. They're out on the road for 5 days, and then as we talked about, the recovery time of all this, I think is probably more important than the preparation time that they have. So hopefully the Big Ten schedule will be out, and be able to dissect that a little bit. All right, thanks for stopping by. Appreciate it. Have a good day, and we'll talk to you next time.